I studied a master's degree in animal welfare, science, ethics and law at the University of Glasgow. So part of that was the science behind, do animals feel pain? What distresses them? How can we tell if they're distressed? And other part of that was ethics. So it was working out how other people feel about that. Is this something we should be bothered about? Should we care that animals feel distressed when they're going to slaughter, for example? But also trying to understand people's viewpoints. So a lot of people nowadays are vegan, and part of that is great for animal welfare. They care about how animals feel. But then if you're coming at, say, meat production from a stance of absolutely it should not happen, then it makes it very difficult when you're trying to improve animal welfare standards, because you want lots of people to be behind you and be pressuring it to be better.
As you've kind of implied there, it's obviously a very emotive topic, isn't it? And you get quite strong views on both sides, I would suggest, of the coin, if you like, on that front.
Yeah, definitely. I think because it's so emotional, sometimes people find it hard to be a bit rational about it. Sometimes they can be quite reactive to things they see online. It can be quite hard, I think, to be an informed consumer. There's lots of different pressure groups. There's people who sell meat want you to buy meat. PETA don't want anybody to have pets or animals going to slaughter. They quite famously will show lambs with cuts on them and say this is what happens when they've been sheared, when it's definitely not true. So it can be difficult to tell what's true, what's not. But also, I think, coming from an ethical point, sometimes people have been raised eating meat. They're not quite comfortable with how it's done. And I think people should really get to know the process. And if you learn more about it and you don't like it, then I think you can make a better decision about whether you should keep eating meat or keep having pets.
Speaking of getting to know the process, you recently had a tour around Isle of Man meats. Some people would know it as the meat plant or the abattoir perhaps on the island. Tell us a bit about what you saw.
So I went down twice. I saw cattle and sheep being processed. They very kindly took me around all sections. They took me into the lairage where the animals are brought in, and I saw the process where it's very thorough. They are checked. They identify every animal. That's part of their traceability. So they can see the ear tag. It gets marked down. You know where every bit of meat has come from. They also have, I was quite impressed with the layout of the lairage and the race going into the slaughter area. It was very much what I'd read beforehand from people like Temple Grandin, who were the top of the field in terms of animal slaughter. She's created a lot of the setups for animal slaughter. She's been groundbreaking. She was the one who worked with McDonald's back in 1970s to 1990s when they started to create these standards for animal welfare, which actually led to a lot of big abattoirs in the US being shut down because they weren't up to McDonald's standards. So I went into the abattoir with her audit questions in mind and found that actually it was very good standards. So I saw the animals come in, the way they were held, some going into the race. I definitely saw where certain bits are trickier. So there's definitely an element of the animal's personality that comes into it. You will get in a batch maybe some quiet cows and then one very rough cow that wants to get in and shove in the middle of everyone, and that's something you can't really control from the outside. They are still big, dangerous animals. You can't get in there in the middle of them. I also saw the actual killing process. I think I expected it to be a lot more emotional to watch, but actually it's very quick. It was what I expected, what I had researched. And the guidelines are, for example, with cattle, once they've had the stun bolt, you have a minute to bleed it out. And I found the ones that I watched, they were well within a minute. It was more like 20 seconds before the animal was bled out, so no chance of it waking up. And in that, we are following also EU regulations, time-wise.
So, I mean, you said on social media animals are calm, the facility's built to good industry standards. How do you think it compares with other facilities of a similar kind of function, if you like, further afield, overseas?
I think they have some challenges and some benefits to being a smaller facility. So in terms of challenges, you don't really get the economies of scale. It's very much one at a time processing. But the benefits are, I think, is that it can be calmer, and the slaughterman's got a lot of control in how fast the animals come towards him. He's not being pressured to get 1,000 cattle done a day, which you might be in the UK. We also over here, pigs are stunned with, they are electrocuted outside their head. For the EU stands of 3 seconds, I think, and then they're bled out. In the UK, they're moving a lot towards CO2, so they'll put the pigs on a platform, slowly bring them down into higher and higher concentrations of CO2, and then when it gets to about 70%, they'll die. That's what's been quite controversial recently.
And what are the reasons for the controversy there? Is that to do with different methods being perceived to be more or less humane? Is that basically what it boils down to, or is it more than that?
It's pretty much that. Sometimes these methods are quite hard to watch. When you electrocute an animal and stun it and then kill it, after it's bled out, its muscles can still kick because this electricity's just gone through it. So even though you know that animal's dead, you've just seen it being bled out, you can still be a bit shocked by it. And I think some of the footage people have seen of pigs being gassed is that upsets them is that 30 seconds of high activity where they seem to be sometimes panting. I think I would like to see more research into stress levels of pigs. The benefit of having them gassed is that you don't separate them. Pigs are highly social animals. It can be stressful for them to remove them from a group, and if you're doing large batches of pigs every day, you might have to separate them for quite a long time. But also it is quite quick, 30 seconds, and then that's it done, and that's a whole lot of pigs done.